Kamusta everyone, I'm Sis and this is the Phantom Heart. If you know me, you know that ever since I finished Dark Souls, I've always played games on the hardest difficulty possible. You might think it's for the challenge to prove to myself that I can handle difficult games, and that is true to some extent, but the main reason for this is that playing games on the hardest difficulty possible, more often than not, changes the core mechanics and gameplay of the game, which makes sense since it's by default supposed to do that, but what people don't realize is that it changes the game and how it feels to play to the point where the game itself transforms into a somewhat different game entirely. It doesn't always happen, but it happens. And one of the best examples of that is the game Left 4 Dead 2. If you don't know, which I hardly think you don't, Left 4 Dead 2 is, according to Wikipedia, is a 2009 multiplayer survival horror game developed and published by Valve. Keyword, survival. But when I played this game back when it was first released, it was anything but survival. You missed. Is he dead? Still alive. Tanks are not as scary when you're with other people. At best, when you play the game on its default difficulty, it was a fantasized action horror zombie game where the main objective is to go from point A to point B, usually killing everything that's in the way. Now, there is nothing wrong with that, and if you enjoy the game for what it is, then good, you're supposed to enjoy games how you want to enjoy them. But here's the thing. If you bump up the difficulty settings to expert, which is the game's hardest difficulty option, everything about the game changes. The game stops being so action-oriented. In fact, it then punishes you if you start playing it that way. Instead, it becomes something more. It becomes, in the truest sense, a multiplayer survival horror game. Oh my god, it takes so long. We need to move. No, just move. We can't. GOG, let's go. Be quick. That's not gonna stop, I think. Smoker here. Charger. Is that a witch? Wait, what? I didn't see the witch. Nor did I hear anything. And I say multiplayer because you really do need a competent group of people to finish the game. This was especially difficult for me because other than Overwatch, I don't normally play with friends or with other people for that matter. It's partly because of the language barrier, but also because I usually have a hard time cooperating and following instructions. But this game made it so that if I wanted to survive the next round, I'm going to have to get out of my comfort zone and do things that I don't normally do. You know, like an actual zombie apocalypse. Ironically enough, my inability to socialize with people made the game extra immersive, which I didn't really expect. Instead of killing everyone you see, you start to sneak around, find new paths, use tactics such as taunting, baiting, funneling, and usually just plain old running from fights, which would sound very boring and against fun, but as a survival game, it kinda made sense. It becomes more realistic and at the very least, more cooperative. You conserve ammo, you use items wisely, you play it slow and steady when it needs to be, and fast and quick when it has to be. And most of all, and why I appreciate playing games this way is that it makes you think. It stops being a mindless shoot 'em up game and becomes a puzzle of sorts. You start, you die, you start, you die, you start, and you die. It does this over and over and over and over and over again until you finally learn the game's mechanics and beat the game, which might be somewhat harder than Dark Souls, only because unlike Dark Souls, the enemy spawn locations along with all the items and weapons in the game always changes every time you lose and die, which makes the game extra difficult to predict and will force you to think on your toes as you play. And just like that, without even trying, it becomes a horror game on its own. There's a charger somewhere.
I know.
And a witch. Bob.
Bob! Stop doing it.
Who's gonna get the witch? I think it should be Consequence because he has the most experience. Oh, that's the witch.
Want me to shoot
Oh,
it?
she's in front. No, we can't.
Don't shoot it.
Wait.
Oh, he
Oh,
fucked
no.
up. No, he got it. There's a chance that you can kill the witch if you shoot it in the head fast enough. Why? Because you don't know what's going to happen. If you play games like The Evil Within or Resident Evil, chances are the zombies found on specific areas of the game would be the same zombies on those said areas if you happen to start a new playthrough of the game, which is all fine and dandy since it's a scripted and story-based game, but since Left 4 Dead 2 is a multiplayer game, they had to somehow innovate and try to make it feel like a new game every time you start a new session. And that is why, from what I've gathered, is one of those games that is really hard to speedrun. Every location of the zombies changes every boot up and provides a sense of dynamic challenge, and it unintentionally made the game a lot more scarier. What's around the corner? Is it safe? Is there a smoker there? Would a tank appear? Should I just run it, or do I hide and wait? Go with a melee weapon or just a pistol? All of this you have to think about as you go further on. Now, it's still a glorified hallway shooter where you have to go from point A to point B, but it's done in a way that it doesn't feel like that at all, at least if this is your first and second playthrough of the game. I would also like to add that since it's a multiplayer game, one bad player could mean the life and death of the whole group, as everything he or she does affects the AI of the zombies in the game. Do something stupid and the whole horde will swarm you way before you can get your act together. Go in alone and a random hunter might pounce on you, leaving you to die right before your team can get anywhere near you. And it's great. It's what it's supposed to feel, and it creates a sense of challenge as all survival games should have. Sure, there are exploits that you can do to make the game easier, but why? Why would you do that to yourself? If you're gonna do that anyways, just play the game on normal since it's the same thing if you use those cheap tactics. Furthermore, adding to that, the game also introduces a realism mode where it removes all the highlights in the game, which means you can no longer see teammates through walls, items and weapons at far locations, switches and levers are hidden until you get close enough and the zombies become, believe it or not, a lot harder to kill, despite it already being hard enough by itself. To be honest, I wouldn't really recommend playing the game on realism mode unless you beat the game at least once, since it further changes the gameplay entirely, even above what expert mode has to offer. I tried it once on one campaign, specifically the last one, and it made the game absurdly harder than it was, which, it's fine, it's great actually. It has a strong sense of being difficult but fair, and I'm excited to play more of it, but it's mostly made for people who already beaten the game. I see it as more or less as a challenge mode of sorts, and if you decide to play it, it might make you hate the game more if you already hated how fast you can die on just ordinary ordinary expert difficulty. So yes, it's an amazing game despite how old it is, and the AI can get pretty difficult, which is weird because your companion AI is usually not that smart, but the enemy AI feels like there's an actual person behind it trolling you to do something stupid so they can take advantage of it. It's really great, and I suggest you try it when you do decide to play the game, just not on expert realism on your first playthrough. Overall, what I'm trying to say is that on the hardest difficulty possible, Left 4 Dead 2 is no longer an action horror game. It's now a hardcore survival horror first-person shooter zombie game where you're not sure what to expect, and it's a game that would test your tactics, decision making, patience, and the trust you and your friends have with each other. And that's it. But let's say that you just want to play the game normally. Is it still worth it? That's what I'm gonna tackle on my next video. Should you play Left 4 Dead 2? I'm currently working on it right now and should be uploaded around this month. So in the meantime, if you want to see that in the near future, if you would so kindly subscribe and click on that notification bell. I have lots of videos lined up for this channel and I would sincerely appreciate it if you would check it out. You never know, if you don't like the content, you can just unsubscribe, right? What's there to lose? And if you've already watched this part of the video, chances are you've enjoyed the video. At least I hope so. So yeah, that's it. Have a great day guys, and if you want to see more playthroughs of this super impressive game, despite how old it is, I'll leave a playlist on the description below. I'm Sizz, and thank you for watching.